With over 70 hours in Final Fantasy XVI, this might be the best story Final Fantasy has ever made. Clive's journey brings Final Fantasy back to its roots in high fantasy, where evil kings seek to conquer the world, powerful creatures roam those roads between settlements, and those gifted with almighty powers have lofty ambitions for a better tomorrow. While Final Fantasy XVI might not play like those classic Final Fantasy titles, the themes that made us fall in love with them is very present. Clive is a boy who had his whole future laid out for him. Son of the Duke of Rosaria, older brother to the dominant of the Eikon Phoenix, it was going to be his life to serve Rosaria as Joshua's shield. After the attack on Phoenix Gate, however, Clive is sold off to the Empire as a branded bearer, someone who can use magic that is seen as a lesser being by others, and that promising future, as well as the whereabouts and status of his loved ones, becomes unknown. Picking up with Clive over a decade later, it's his encounter with Cid, an outlaw looking to create a future free of the crutch of magic, where bearers aren't seen as inferior, that a new path is placed in front of him. Cid takes Clive under his wing, introducing him to new places and underworld contacts. Here you'll be able to create lasting bonds throughout the story. As Clive makes new connections and rediscovers old ones, the former slave and assassin quickly becomes the outlaw with a heart of gold. The story of Final Fantasy XVI doesn't just focus on Clive and those immediately around him, but does an incredible job showing the players just how messed up this world is, and just how much needs to be done to set it right. Final Fantasy XVI is an epic Game of Thrones-like story, crossing not only geographic and political lines as nations' power rise and falls, but also family lines as relationships strengthen and crumble under pressure. While all Final Fantasy games conclude with the party trying to save the world, it's the depths of interactions with the common people that you meet along the way that makes this the first Final Fantasy that I've truly felt like I'm saving the world from more than just the party. When you're not in the hideaway, Cid's base of operations where you can shop, craft new gear and listen to music, Clive will instead be out exploring the world. You can travel to waypoints which give you full access to the different regions of the game, hunt monsters in the wild, take on side quests, or explore for hidden treasures in these zones. These regions feel a lot like those from Final Fantasy XII, and while not as large as the open world of 15, offer just the right amount of open space with density of interesting features. At certain points in the story, you'll be prompted to enter action stages. These are more linear missions, filled with a variety of enemies, and all lead up to a climactic battle. This split between exploration and action stages allows for the freedom to have a persistent open world, while also offering a way to have game-altering moments occur in separate stages. Even better, these action stages can be replayed at any time from the hideaway. Combat in Final Fantasy XVI is fast-paced and fluid. There's a big emphasis on chaining together basic attacks and well-timed dodges with flashy Eikon powers. Different Eikon powers approach battle differently. Some focus on simple offensive or defensive abilities, while others might rely on inflicting passive damage. There were a number of ways that Final Fantasy XVI combat did leave me wanting for more. Weapons that Clive obtains only have the attack and stagger stat, and most of those are the exact same. Each of these weapons are unlocked in a linear fashion. This means that every Clive on the 20th story mission will likely have the exact same equipment no matter who's playing the game. Another strange aspect of Final Fantasy XVI combat is that while you might be using a fire or lightning spell, there's no elemental weaknesses or resistances for any of the enemies in the game. This means that once you find that perfect combo that fits you of sword swings and abilities, there's never really any reason to change. In certain fights in Final Fantasy XVI, Clive will activate the ability of his Eikon Ifrit, transforming into a giant flaming beast. These Eikon fights were a bit hit or miss for me throughout the game. On the one hand, the spectacle of two giant entities battling it out between QuickTime events was exhilarating to see. But when fighting in just the arena, a lot of the times it was slower movement and far spongier health bars, making combat feel somewhat monotonous. Thankfully, there weren't too many Eikon fights in the game. Surprising absolutely no one, Final Fantasy XVI looks gorgeous. Not only do the animations look great, but all of the voice cast has done an amazing job. Every time Sid was on screen, I was enamored by Ralph Ineson's performance.
And cut out the tongue of any man who tries to talk me out of it.
All right. Forest dark enough as it is.
Particle effects in Final Fantasy XVI are also taken to the next level. As early as the opening Phoenix fight against Ifrit, you can see the beautiful details of flames coming off their feathers. There is one downside to just how incredible the effects of the different spells look, as casting too many at the time can heavily obscure the screen. In a game where it's so important to be timing dodges correctly, it can really be counterintuitive to be casting spells that mean that you can't see what you're trying to hit. While shallow customization and development of Clive is a bit of a letdown coming from a Final Fantasy title, the fast-paced combat and incredible story had me struggling to put down the controller. For new or old Final Fantasy fans, even if you're not that much of a fan of this combat style, it's definitely worth playing for the story alone. After finishing the game immediately, the allure of New Game Plus and the Final Fantasy mode had me ready to start all over again. If you want to read our full Final Fantasy XVI review, be sure to check out the link in the description and check out TechRaptor.net for more gaming and tabletop news, features, and reviews.